Yes, yes. All right, so we're live now. So welcome to today's last CBT 18 monthly Azure webinar. Today we're going to be talking about Azure App Service. And today, on today's episode, we have Adnan Hendricks and myself anchoring today's episode. So Adnan, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's already
Adnan,
afternoon over here.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're an hour ahead. All right then, so Adnan, it's over to you now.
Hey, thanks, Kazeem. Good morning, everybody. I hope Nigeria is well over there with everybody with our current circumstances. My name is Adnan Hendricks. You guys can follow me online on my social media channels with my handle @microspecialist. We got some good things to talk about today, and that's the Azure App Service. And along with Kazeem, he'll be showing you guys all about app service plans and why you need them and what they can do. So this is pretty much our agenda, which is loosely based. We'll do a big overview, talk about app service plan, and then running your web application on an Azure App Service. So what is an Azure App Service actually? It's pretty much a service or a web application hosting platform that Microsoft provides that allows you to build and host your web applications. So web applications or applications such as mobile applications hosted on this platform in just about any programming language of your choice without you having to manage infrastructure, which means all you have to do is focus on building and developing your application. So this Azure App Service falls under PaaS or Platform as a Service, meaning Microsoft takes care of the backend infrastructure. For example, their physical hardware, the operating systems that they're running on the machines, and they will be doing all the management and updating all that. All that you have to do is make sure that once you create, when you have an application, like you want to develop an application, that you deploy it into this app service. And then in the back end, you can go and specify things like the type of backend hardware that you require based on the needs of your application tools or tooling. So all this means that under PaaS, you have specific responsibilities that Microsoft does a part, and you as customer, all you have to do is ensure that you have your application, so the rights to the application. For example, your application will be running any user identities, any endpoints connecting that, also things like monitoring and that sort of thing that you will have to set up so you can have a look and see how that application is performing based on the endpoints that's accessing that application. So mutual responsibility. And once again, just to show that traditionally, a lot of people were running web applications internally in their organizations on a virtual machine as a VM in a network in the infrastructure. And if you move towards PaaS, you'll see a dramatic decrease in price, and also the thing of the infrastructure requirements that will be needed. So that brings the cost to host an application a lot cheaper when you're running it on Azure than if you were to, host it yourself or at a hosting provider, etc. Now, the app service is a service. You can lift and shift current applications using the Azure migration service to an Azure App Service. So any existing apps that you have running on IIS or other kind of apps, you can migrate an existing app instead of rewriting that app, which just makes it easier and faster to deploy. Azure App Service also allows you to deploy your application or run it as a container, so containerize. And being multi-platform, it doesn't really matter the kind of language or programming language that you will be using. .NET, ASP, PHP, all these different programming languages are supported. You can deploy your code through Deployment Center to create a continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD pipeline into your app service, so that your app is always updated with the latest version. So fully managed enterprise-grade functional service to allow you to run and create your apps. Now, when creating an app service, or an app service by nature is a multi-tenant service, so it's PaaS, meaning Microsoft hosts and pretty much manages the running of that, and thousands of customers can utilize the app service and run safely and securely on pretty much the same infrastructure backend. Now, if there might be some cases where you want to have a single tenant instance of an app service. So you could also deploy an app service environment in your Azure subscription. That's a single tenant instance of that app service. So you can deploy it in your virtual network. Now the public app service, you connect to it through internet. You can have a private link connection to a virtual network with that, or you can have a endpoint link connection, so you can still connect to it securely and customize your app service. But if you have specific dedicated needs for a specific app service environment, that's also possible through an ASE. So just up over to the Azure architecture, so you guys can see the infrastructure, the hardware manager, the fabric controller, and then you have your Azure Resource Manager. So a number of ways in which you can go and create that web application or mobile application on an app service is through the Azure portal, the CLI, or other third-party tools like ARM templates or a developer tooling. And all the backend integration through role-based authentication and then the insights on those web applications is also possible. So that pretty much covers the architecture. Now I just want to talk about a comparison. So under you get different kinds of applications. So app service basically allows you to run a web application, which is pretty much the most frequently used applications. Multi-platform browser-based application, and then Logic Apps is more workflows and designer to orchestrate processes. When creating mobile apps, it's more an app specifically designed for the mobile platform that will utilize a notification hub or notifications and use Xamarin specifically for mobile devices applications. So I'll discuss web applications and mobile, but now to quickly talk about Logic Apps. Logic Apps falls under serverless platform, and it allows you to create workflows and orchestrate, almost like an integrator with all these different other Azure services. So utilizing a designer, you can create workflows based on a trigger with different actions, and they pretty much integrate and connect applications, data services with Azure functions. You can also connect and orchestrate and integrate with hundreds of different connectors with both Azure and third-party applications and services. So the workflow designer allows you to go and design the trigger and then create which specific connector you will then enable. So it's a totally different environment than the app service. And just to show you on the next slide is that you have the integration between all these different Azure services and other applications, whether they're on premises, in the cloud, etc. And that's really what a Logic app does. So it integrates different components and it's easy to build and design, whereas a web application is pretty much your code running on an app service specifically for web applications. And that brings me to app service plans and the demo by Kazeem. So over to you, Kazeem. I'm just going to stop sharing and then you can continue.
Okay, very well, Adnan. Thank you. So I'm just quickly going to share my latest slides. Okay. All right. So good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to you again, Adnan. So I'm just going to be walking you through the app service plan, part of today's topic. So these are what I'm going to be showing you. Most of what I'm going to be showing you, I'll walk you through them from the portal, from the Azure portal itself. So we'll look at what app service plan is. We're going to be looking at the app service plan pricing tier, with plan scaling, and we'll try to wrap things up with. So let's app service plans. So what is an app service plan? An app service plan defines set of compute requirements that is required for a web app to run. So it's similar to our hosting service. You know, you need to host like a website. You probably want to register a domain name and you look for an hosting company to host your website with. So if you like to host your web apps, you like to host like a website on Azure, part of the requirement is for you to have an app service plan created, right? And when you try to create an app service plan, it is confined to a region. First, just like Adnan has mentioned, it is a PaaS service, meaning platform as a service. Most of the heavy lifting is being taken away from you, so you won't have to be doing most of the work. The cloud provider, in this case, Microsoft, is going to be managing most of the things, for you. And I said it defines the compute requirements that we need to have in order for us to run our web apps, right? Whether it be a web app or a mobile app. For instance, what you'll get to see, as I'll get to show you shortly, is that there are times, depending on the consumption of your app, the number of connections that you're going to be having on your app, you might need to scale up and scale down as required. So that is what some of the things that you can do with an app service plan. And it comes also in different tiers. So just quickly now, let me try to share my screen. All right, so here is my Azure portal now. We all know to log into the portal, it is portal.azure.com. So it brings us to the landing page here. So if we're trying to create a plan, or you want to create any resource at all on Azure, on the Azure portal, you can do so by clicking on this create a resource button here, or you click here. Oh, I'm back now.
Are you back? You just fell away. I couldn't hear you. So.
Yes, I think it was connectivity issues. But can you still see my screen?
Yes. We could see your screen.
Okay. All right. So if we need to create an app service plan, we can do so from here. So I can just click on my app service. And from here, we can choose to create one, create app service. All right, so the first thing you need to do is to choose a valid subscription for your app service and then choose a resource group. So I'm going to work with this resource group here. Give your app service a name. So here you need to be sure that you're giving it a unique name, a name that is unique on the Azure website.net. So it has to be a unique name. So let's look for one. How about we call it Lasso App 2? Okay, Lasso App 2 is the name that I'm giving to it, that I'm going to give to it. And how do we intend to publish? Are you going to publish using a code? Are you going to work with a container? So I think in the later episode, we're going to at some point be talking about containers. So here we're going to use a code. So which of the runtime stack does your developer want to code in? So are you looking to code with Python? Are you looking to code in Java, Tomcat? So all of the options are here. So just choose one that you're comfortable with. Or if you're trying to set the stage, you're trying to create a web app for your developers. So you need to ask your developer which of the languages they're going to be coding in. So you need to choose an operating system here. So the two operating system of choice available to us here include Windows and Linux. Just like when you want to also host with some of these providers, some of these hosting providers, they are going to ask you these questions. Are you looking to host on a Windows platform? Are you looking to host on a Linux platform? So I'm going to go with Windows here. And a region that is closest to you. So how about I go with, let's do Europe in this case. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to choose an SKU and a size for your web app. So the way you do that is by creating, I can click on change and it comes up with this spec picker here. So you will notice here that there are about three options. There is the dev/test. This, by the way, is talking about the pricing tier, right? There's the dev and test pricing tier. There's the production and there is the isolated. So under the dev and test, so this is more for when you're creating an app for use in a testing environment. You know, you are into development, you're trying to develop an app for yourself, you know, you're testing things out, then you can stay here under the test dev environment. So you would see that we have various options here to pick from. There is the F1 pricing tier, there is the D1, and there is the B1. So depending on which of the pricing tier that you're picking, you find that what is included will change. But simply clicking on this F1, you see that this is all that I get, you know, the memory to run my app service plan, and I have storage of just about 1 gig here to work with. So how about clicking on B1? So with B1, I can do a little bit more. So it supports custom domains with XSL, you know, for certificates. I can do manual scaling. So here I cannot auto scale, but it's possible for me to manually scale my app up to a maximum of about 3 instances. And with the B1 option, you also get access to 10 gig of storage. So how about going to production? So this is more for when you need to build application that run in the production environment, application for production workloads. So here there are a number of pricing tiers to also pick from. We have the S1, we have the P1 and the P2. The S1 simply stands for standard. When you see the S, it stands for standard, and when you see the P stands for premium. So you see that with this one, you're able to do a bit more compared to what you can do with the dev test environment. So here I support certificates. You can do auto scaling, not just manually scaling here. You have traffic manager, that comes with it, that allows you to shape your traffic depending on, when you have so many apps and then you have many instances, many web app instances defined already. So the traffic manager allows you to shape traffic across those different instances. And with the storage here, you have about 50 gigabytes of storage. So how about we try to do premium? So with the premium, you'll notice that it supports way more than we get with the standard. So here we're getting a storage of 250. We can scale up to about 20 instances here. So, and finally, we have the isolated, so which is indicated with the I, right? So this is more for mission critical workloads. So when you're looking to build mission critical workloads, then you probably want to go with the isolated option. So here, it allows you to do all of what we get with the standard plus more storage, and you are also able to use your isolated network. So that means you can run your app within your own virtual network. In those, in our previous episode, we've looked at how to set up networks, right? How to set up virtual networks. So if you have one in place and you're looking for your app to run within your own virtual network, so it means that choosing a dev test option is not going to get it done for you. So you will need to opt to choose the isolated option here. So for this demo, I'm just going to work with, how about we do production and I stay with S1. So I'll choose S1, apply. And let's try to create one. All right, so the deployment is now being completed for us. So let's go to the resources. So another way of getting here is to also click on App Service. So clicking on App Service would expose all of the app services that you have to you here. Okay, so I have one here that I've just created. So I'm going to click on it. And here you have it. We've created an app service plan. So this is how we create an app service plan. And quickly, before I hand over to Adnan, I also mentioned I was going to talk about scaling, right? So if you're looking to scale, just like we saw when we were trying to choose the pricing tier, we saw that the free tier, under the free tier, we really couldn't do auto scaling. So we're limited to doing manual scaling. But once you progress to those mission critical one, that's the isolated or the production, then it gives us the ability to auto scale, right? So if you're looking to do scaling, you scale from here, right? And to scale, there are two types of scaling that we need to know that exists. There is scaling up and there is scaling out. So the difference between this means that when I scale up, I'm trying to increase my my VM subsystem, more like, this is still more like a virtual machine running somewhere, although we don't have complete access to the virtual machines. Is a past service, right? So when I scale up, I'm trying to increase things like memory. I'm trying to increase things like CPU power. That is scaling up. But when you scale out, you are talking about adding instances service plan. So that's basically the difference between the two. Scaling out means adding instances. Then scaling up means adding more memory, adding more CPU to your workload. So if I need to, I feel that the particular app service plan that I'm using is not giving me what I need. I need to support more instances. For instance, I created it based on the S1 production instance. So production tier. So if I see what I can get with F1, I can auto scale up to about 10 instances. So what happens if I need to support more instances here, or I need to have more memory? The maximum memory that I have with S1 is 1.75 gig. So I want something that will give me more processing, more memory capacity. So I'll need to change from S1 to P1 here. And I see this one allows me to scale up to 20 instances. So if you need to scale up, it is as easy as choosing a different option from within your tiers here. And if you're looking to scale out, on the other end, you click here and you can manually scale, or you can decide to perform auto scaling. So those are the two options that you have. Though there are a few conditions that you need to set. You need to set how you want to scale. How do you intend to scale? So are you scaling based on rules? So what are you using to scale? So I can say, for instance, scale to a specific instance count. So I want to automatically scale to 2 instances. I want it to scale to 3 instances. So likewise, if I also want to manually scale, so I can select my manual scaling. There's one instance here. I can let it scale to 2 or scale to however instances that I want it to scale to. So that basically is the difference here. This is how we create an app service plan, and how we work with some of the settings that we have here. So you click here and you click on your app service, select the app service of your choice that you've created, and you can work with it from here. So Adnan, I think I'll be stopping here now, and I'll hand it over back to you.
Thank you, Kazeem.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you,
I'm
Adnan.
just going to be keeping my camera off for a bit, just to conserve my bandwidth over here. For some reason, I got kicked out of the meeting. But just to reshare my screen and continue back with my part of the show. So once again, Kazeem just explained the app service plans, the requirements you need to run any application and the underlying infrastructure. I'll be continuing with back with web apps. So you basically want to run your application as a web application, or build a web application on the underlying app service plan, who's going to be making sure that it runs. And Kazeem explained how by scaling up when the requirements needed for more CPU, more memory, and scaling out when you need more instances. So with that, Azure can automate all those processes for you. So when building your web application in the app service, it's pretty much a platform as a service feature or functionality of Azure. You can build both client side and server side and create both applications that require both Windows or Linux, even running your web app as a container in an app service plan. So this is just an architecture diagram of a simple web application. So ideally, you'd be connecting to that app service over public internet. So, and if you need to assign or log into the application, you can connect that to Azure Active Directory, etc. as the identity. So that app service or web application has an underlying app service plan, and that's the how you equate the infrastructure requirements to what you're paying to Azure, and that runs in a resource group, and it can also have a backend database. For example, later on, I'll show you guys how you can run and set up your own WordPress site on an Azure web app or Azure web application and utilizing storage. Now, there's a number of ways in which you can go and design and develop these applications or deploy these services. Firstly, you could use Visual Studio. Most developers are already using Visual Studio to, design their code and their applications. And by utilizing you could either connect directly to your Azure subscription or by utilizing a publishing profile to access your app service. You can then go and publish the application that you designed and have it running in Azure. Now with Visual Studio, we know it's multi-platform for both Windows and Mac. You can have different kinds of customizable workloads, multi-language support. You get tons of different extensions and different extensions from different platforms, and you can share all that directly to Azure, to, for example, GitHub platforms, etc. Visual Studio, there's also Visual Studio Code, which is an application that has Git commands built in. It's extensible, also customizable, and also supports all platforms of application programming languages that you might want to support. Getting more specific to Azure, Azure Terminal or CLI, you have the Cloud Shell in Azure that allows you to use these different command line interfaces. So the Cloud Shell running in the Azure portal, and you can design and create app services using Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell for that matter. ARM templates, the JSON format, that's another way in which you can quickly deploy an app service plans in a resource manager, resource group, and you can go and create a template and deploy that to Azure by creating a web application or any other service for that matter. With that brings me to the demo. So I'm just going to step back into my Azure environment, and one of the demos is to show you guys how you can create a beautiful WordPress app, such as this Azure WordPress site that I've created, to run as an app in an app service. So off the bat, WordPress is a great application that allows you to build, very professional looking websites and web applications with a lot of links that hooks into social media. For example, things like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, also email. And it's just a big designer and application that one of the things that I really like. So in apps or under Azure in my portal, in my subscription, I have the app services. And within app services, I can either click on add, and just show you how you step through and create just a default web application or app. So you can create a new resource group. I'll just call it Web App 1. Give it a name. This name needs to be unique because it's immediately available on internet with Azure Websites.net. So I'm just going to call it ADH Web App 01. And Azure says that name is available. Now here I have the option to select what I want to publish. So I can either publish my programming code, or I can publish my app service as a Docker container and then run my app in that container. So I'm just going to leave it as code and select my run stack. And as you can see, it supports .NET, ASP.NET, Java applications, Java 8, Node, PHP, Python, Ruby, etc. So quite a lot of different versions and options available. Operating system, I'm going to leave it at Windows and select my closest region so it goes really fast. Now, Kazeem spoke all about the app service plans, the underlying infrastructure that's really tied to my pricing and my requirements. So I have a Windows plan already set up in this West Europe. I'm just going to use that. I can set up monitoring, enable application insights. I'm just going to say no. Click tag, review, and then have Azure create that. So Azure will go and create the deployment just to show you what it looks like in an ARM template. So this is the JSON format ARM template that has all the different resources, and Azure can show you what that is. So here you can add it to your library, you can redeploy or download it and modify it and save it separately. So that resource has been created. I'm just going to go to my new web application that I've created. So I've ideally just created a Azure web application instance that's a .NET framework with a specific URL. So if I go to the URL, it has this placeholder, which means my app service is up and running. Now I can go and add my own application to that. So this is where the developer comes in. And if you're not a developer, you can just click on Quick Starts and step through any number of these different quick starts or tutorials and just follow through. There's a lot of samples as well, depending on the type of applications and tests that you can go and use to show you samples of web applications and how by deploying a template or just running PowerShell or utilizing CLI, you can step through the process and then create a web application. So a lot of how-to guides, and you guys should definitely step through some of these options. So once again, whether you know Node.js or you used to writing Java apps, there's all these different samples just to show you how you can take what you know and run it as an Azure web application in an app service. So I'm just going to go back to Azure App and step through some of these placeholders. So some of the options that you have, so that's my URL for my website running on my app service plan. I can go and set up, I can also browse directly or stop my app service from running, etc. FTP options, if I want to use FTP to upload my application to that app service. I can also download a publishing profile if I'm using something like a Visual Studio Code to develop my application, and I can either sign into my Azure subscription or just utilize the publishing profile to publish my application from within Visual Studio directly to that app service app. Now, I know that a lot of enterprise customers, quite often they have a lot of different infrastructure environments set up for developing an application, their production environment, and also the testing environment. Now with Azure, things are very simple. You can actually create different deployment slots in your same app service that's running on the same app service plan or underlying infrastructure. So by utilizing under deployment slots, I can go and create a staging slot or a testing slot. So I'm just going to click on add slot, give it a name, testing. I'm not going to clone, but at the same time, you can say just clone a copy of my website from the production slot. I'm just going to leave it as is, click on add. And what this will do is allow me to create, or it will go and create another URL specific to that deployment slot, my staging slot. And I can have developers working on, the new version of the application in my staging slot, while my production environment is still running in my production slot, and that's for my public customers. And then once I click on the close, then let's say I'm happy with the testing, I can easily quickly swap my testing as my new production slot. So that gives me minimal to almost no downtime, depending on obviously how you plan that. And that's a lot quicker and easier than having separate environments. So if I go to ADH Web Testing, it has its own URL, and I can just have developers publishing application, or through something like Deployment Center, I can create continuous integration, so automation. So through GitHub repos, Azure repos, and other options, or local Git repos, or even deploy and push from things like OneDrive or Dropbox, and just ensure that this website is continuously up to date with the latest version of the application. But with deployment slots, it's really easy that I have my testing and my production slots running on the same app service plan, as you can see, and all my traffic, as you can see, is running directly to my production slot, which is ADH Web App 01. So with this app, there's a lot of different options that I can do. So different settings based on the type of application that I'm running, because it's a .NET application. I can create a custom domain. If I have a domain name registered, I can tie that into my, instead of having people see the Azure websites.net, I can, for example, have myname.com and add that domain for my web application. Things like backups and snapshots, they tie to the service plans. So depending on the type of S1 or premium or type of app service plan that you make, depends on the number of backups and snapshots that you can do. Authentication I can also add. Things like networking. So I can connect my publicly running in Azure app service to VNets in my organization, VNets on premises, hybrid connections, add a web application firewall through Azure front door for this web application, just to create that little bit more security. I can also add any web jobs. So web jobs are scripts or programs that can run in the context of my app service that might do things like uploading files or things like that. Looking more at mobile, I can enable push notification hubs. And also a lot of monitoring and that sort of thing. So that's basically a quick step. Within 5 minutes, you can have an app service running for a web application, and then all you have to do is go and design it. Now, there's a lot of different applications available in the Azure Marketplace. For example, if you already used to utilizing WordPress or using WordPress, you can go and use WordPress application designer on a Azure App Service. So I'm selecting the WordPress on Linux. So you create a name for your app. I'm going to call it WP001 ADH. And let's see, that's available. Select the subscription, create a new resource group. I'm just going to call it WP001 ADH. My app service plan that needs to run in Europe. WordPress utilizes a database, so I need to go and create a database instance. And give my identity for my database that needs to be tied in, version, and then general purpose. So yeah, I can also specify what my expectations are of, and also based on the cost of the size of my database. So I'm just gonna select that to make it slightly cheaper, 2 cores instead of 4. Click on OK, and it's going to create a backend database and add application insights. So it will deploy the WordPress application in my app service and start that up for me. Once that's done, all I need to do is really just go and sign in with my username and design my WordPress site. So I'm just going to go back to my current one. So once it's run, I'm also already signed into my site, and you just select customize, and then you can go and use the WordPress designer. You can change the theme. For example, if you think that I made it so beautiful, you can have a different theme. So if you're happy about this sort of layout, you can then just save it, activate and publish. But I'm pretty much, I prefer pictures, a lot of pictures. So I'm just going to publish my Azure WordPress site with the nice pictures, because I always feel websites, they work better with a lot of pictures instead of text. The same thing with presentations, you know, a lot of demos and pictures work better than a lot of text. So that's my website published. And if I, by utilizing this WordPress site, I can also have different settings, tools that I can add, different plugins, add like pictures, edit posts, comments. So a lot of things. I can create users for my site, etc. And then things like widgets and menus, those little extra programs that hook into like social media and that sort of stuff. But with Azure WordPress, if I click to visit site, it's just going to take me to my site. And all I have to do is just edit and finish up. And then I have a professional looking website in like 5 minutes, all running on Azure. And if I go back to my Azure subscription, I can have a look at the let's see, last word. So that's the one. So I can always scale up, scale out. I can SSH into the Linux, use advanced tools. I can have a look at metrics. So this is logging. I can have a look at so a lot of monitoring. I can go and run and check, set up your alerting, etc. Or I haven't added application insight, but application insight would give me more a logging. For example, show me how many people are accessing my site, from where, what kind of endpoints they're using. For example, are they accessing from mobile device, etc. And I can use all that information and customize my application based on all the metrics that I would select. So that's quick and easy. I've shown you guys how you can go and create the same thing in WordPress. And to just go back to my presentation. So that was my demo to show you how to create a web application and also how to create a WordPress website running on Linux, Azure App Service in Azure. So in summary, because we're almost running out of time, we've shown you guys a lot of the concepts on comparing a web application, mobile, and Logic apps, app service plans. Kazeem showed you how to create an app service plan, the different service plans available depending on your requirements and the costs that's tied to each set, also the specific settings. And then I showed you guys the ability to create a web application as an app service and utilize your own application program tools like Visual Studio, VS Code to create your application, and then just publish it to the app service using a publishing profile or FTP, or by deployment center if you have something set up in a Git repo or offline Git repository. You can just push that to the app service. Any questions so far?
All right. Do we have anyone with questions? If you have questions, you can kindly unmute and speak, or if you'd like to type it in the chat, so you can do so now. Okay. I guess there's no question. There are no questions there, Adnan.
They can always contact me or on @microspecialist. Send me a DM message, follow me on Twitter, and just let me know what you guys thought of the presentation. And if you guys have any special requests, for example, something in Azure that you'd like us to present on, just let me or Kazeem know. Kazeem, you could give your details where everybody can reach you at.
Yes. So you can follow us on the LASUCBT social media. So it's LASUCBT18 on YouTube, on Facebook as well. And for my own Twitter handle is Kazeem Can Teach. And you find me on Facebook as Kazeem Adegboyega, and also on LinkedIn as Kazeem Adegboyega. So please, just like Adnan mentioned, if there's a particular topic, any topic in questions you need us to look at moving forward, feel free to let us know, and you can trust that we'll make it happen. So thank you very much, Adnan, for your time and sharing your knowledge today once again with everyone. Sure. And yes, and
well, thank you for joining everybody. And thank you, Kazeem.
Yes, anytime, Adnan, and thank you so much, Adnan, once again. So we'll do this again next month. So continue to keep safe, and until then, it's bye-bye from all of us.
Yep. Goodbye till next time. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.